The space station Orion Arc floated in orbit above a quiet moon, glowing softly against the black sky. Inside, the station was busy with voices, footsteps, and flashing lights. People from many different planets came here: humans, aliens, diplomats, scientists, all working together to keep peace in the galaxy. Ensign David Mercer sat alone in the station cafeteria, eating a cold meal of nutrient cubes and recycled water. His shift had just ended, and he was too tired to care about the taste. He worked as a security officer, nothing special. It's just another human among hundreds on the station. He was halfway through chewing when the room went silent. It wasn't the usual kind of silence. It was the kind where even the machines seemed to stop humming. David looked up, confused. And then he saw her. She walked in like she didn't notice anyone. But everyone noticed her. The alien girl was tall, graceful, and glowing slightly, not with light, but with presence. Her skin was a soft shade of deep blue, like the color of the ocean at night. Thin, glowing lines ran down her arms like silver rivers. Her eyes were large and violet, shining with quiet intelligence. Her name was Cyrilla. She was a Zentarian alien race known for their calm minds and long lifespans. Cyrilla wasn't just any visitor. She was a diplomatic liaison, one of the first Centauri to work directly with humans. David had seen her before, from a distance, but now she was walking right past his table. He froze. Then, without thinking, without meaning to, he whispered to himself, "She's so beautiful. I wonder if she'd marry me." He smiled awkwardly at his own joke, knowing no one had heard him, or so he thought. A small buzzing sound came from above. David looked up, and his face turned white. One of the translator drones, hovering quietly nearby, blinked red. The drone had heard him, and Wersit had translated his words into Zentari, and broadcasted them loud and clear. The entire cafeteria was silent. All eyes were on him. Some people stared in shock, others held in laughter. Cyrilla stopped walking. She turned slowly to face him. Her expression was unreadable. She blinked once, then tilted her head, studying him like a strange new life form. David wanted to disappear into his seat. He stood up quickly, knocking over his tray in the process. I didn't mean for that to be heard," he stammered, his voice shaking. "It was just a private thought, not serious." Still Cyrilla said nothing. David looked around. A group of Terran engineers were trying not to laugh. A Zelkin pilot looked impressed. One of the station commanders shook her head. David sighed. "Great. I just made a fool of myself in front of the most important alien on this station." He turned back to Cyrilla. She was still staring at him. Then, slowly, she took one step closer. David held his breath. "You are not what I expected," she said in perfect English. Her voice was soft, calm, like distant music. I get that a lot," David replied, rubbing the back of his neck. "I'm sorry, really." Cyrilla narrowed her eyes, not with anger, but curiosity. "Why would you ask such a question?" David hesitated. It wasn't really a question. Just a thought. "You walked in and I was tired, and you looked like a painting, and my brain said something before I could stop it." For a moment, Cyrilla said nothing. Then she did something no one expected. She smiled. It was a small smile, almost invisible. But David saw it. And then, without another word, she walked away, graceful, silent, and unreadable again. The cafeteria burst into noise, laughter, chatter, even applause from somewhere near the back. David sat back down slowly. He stared at his spilled food, then put his head on the table. "Smooth Mercer," he whispered to himself. "Real smooth." But somewhere deep inside, he couldn't stop smiling. After the strange moment in the cafeteria, David Mercer thought things would return to normal. He hoped everyone would forget what happened. They didn't the next day everywhere he went on. The station, someone gave him a look, smirk, a curious glance, or a raised eyebrow. The cafeteria scene had already become a story. People whispered in hallways. Even the vending machines in engineering played soft romantic music when he passed by. "Romeo of Orion Arc," one technician joked. "Did you buy a ring yet?" Another? Asked with a laugh. David sighed and kept walking. He had made a simple mistake. One sentence, said quietly. But somehow that one moment had changed everything. The worst part? He hadn't seen Cyrilla since then. 3 days passed. David was posted. On corridor duty outside the docking bay, he stood quietly, hands behind his back, watching workers load crates and ships come and go. It was boring work, but safe. Then, without warning, he heard soft footsteps. Elegant, calm, rhythmic. He turned. Dan froze. Syra. She was walking straight, toward him. Her white diplomatic robes shimmered under the station lights. As always, her face was calm and serious. She stopped in front of him without saying a word. David straightened up. "Good afternoon, Liaison Cyrilla." "You may call me Cyrilla," she said softly. He nodded. "Of course." They stood in silence for a few seconds. David waited, unsure. What she wanted, his heart beat faster. He hoped she wasn't here to file an official complaint. "I have a question," Cyrilla finally said. David nodded again. "I'll answer if I can." She looked him straight in the eyes. "Why did you say I was beautiful?" David blinked. He didn't expect that. He cleared his throat. "'Cause you are." She studied him. "Said it without knowing me, without knowing my rank, my mind, or my ways." "Is that how humans choose affection? Based on sight alone?" David thought for a moment. "Sometimes, yes, but not always. I didn't mean to disrespect you. I wasn't thinking clearly. You walked in, and I just said what I felt." Cyrilla didn't look offended. Instead, she looked curious, and you wondered if I would marry you. David chuckled nervously. "Yeah, that part wasn't exactly a plan. More like a crazy thought. Do you often think such thoughts about aliens?" "No. No offense. I've just never seen anyone like you before." Cyrilla looked away, her violet eyes focused on the stars outside the bay window. "In my culture, emotions are not shown so openly. We study, we observe, we decide slowly." "I noticed," David said with a small smile. She turned back to him. "Still, your words made me wonder." David tilted his head. "Wonder what? What kind of person speaks such feelings without fear?" David shrugged. "Tired one. Probably. Or a human." Cyrilla stepped closer. "You have become. It's interesting to me." His eyebrows raised. "Interesting. Unusual," she added. "It's different. Not like the others who follow protocol and speak only practiced lines." David rubbed the back of his neck. "I'm not great at practiced lines, that is clear." David couldn't tell if she was insulting him or not, but her tone wasn't unkind. She looked at the stars again. "Eyes. Among my people, choosing a mate is a process. It takes months. Tests of spirit, intelligence, and patience. There are traditions. I'd probably fail all of them," David said. Cyrilla looked at him. "That remains to be seen." Before David could ask what she meant, she stepped back. "We'll observe you," she said. He blinked. "What? Not officially? Not for duty? For myself. I wish to understand this. Human honesty." David felt his stomach twist. "Are you serious?" Cyrilla nodded. "Yes, you said something foolish, but it was real. Real things are rare in diplomacy." She turned and walked away, leaving David stunned in the hallway. That night, David sat alone in his quarters, thinking about her words. "I will observe you." What did that mean? Would she watch him from a distance? Follow his work? Ask him questions? He didn't know. But he also couldn't stop thinking about it. Outside his window, stars looked the same as always. But something had changed. Over the next few days, David Mercer noticed something strange. Wherever he went, Cyrilla was there, not too close. Not too far, but always watching in the training halls. While David practiced with other security officers, she sat quietly in the observation deck, in engineering, while he helped reroute power through old circuits. She stood near the door, arms folded, watching without speaking, in the library. Where he went to relax, she appeared near the diplomatic archives. Flipping through Earth literature with calm interest, at first, David thought it was a joke. Maybe she was just teasing him after what he said in the cafeteria, but Cyrilla never laughed. She didn't smile much either. She only watched and sometimes asked simple but deep questions. Why do you laugh when something breaks? Do humans eat alone when they are sad? Why do you fix things no one asks you to fix? David had no easy answers. One evening, she stopped him in the corridor. I wish to ask for your time, she said. There is a place I would like to take you. David looked surprised. Where? Observation Dome 3. Meet me tomorrow. At first shift break, he nodded, heart beating faster than it should. All right, I'll be there. The next day, David arrived early. The dome was a quiet place at the top of the station, filled with plants from many worlds. The ceiling was made of clear metal glass, showing the stars beyond. Cyrilla stood near a small fountain. She wore a different robe, today dark silver, with blue patterns that shimmered like flowing water. You came, she said. Of course, David replied. I was curious. She turned and handed him a small device. This is a Zentari logic sphere. We use it to study focus, patience, and problem solving. I would like you to try it. David looked at the device. It was round and smooth, with glowing symbols and shifting patterns. He sat on the bench and began to turn it, pressing symbols, trying to understand the puzzle. It was harder than it looked. Cyrilla sat beside him watching. Quietly, after 10 minutes, he was still confused. This thing's tricky, David said, frowning. It responds to calm minds, Cyrilla explained. If you are angry or rushed, it resists you. David chuckled. Then it's definitely resisting me. But he didn't give up. He slowed down, tried different patterns, thought more carefully. After 20 more minutes, the sphere opened slightly with a soft click. A tiny light glowed inside. Cyrilla nodded. You passed. David looked at her. That was a test. One of many, she said. Should I be worried? No, she said. But I must understand you. Your words were strong. In my culture, strong words must be proven. David leaned back. And how do I prove them? By showing who you are, not just saying it. That night, David thought about the test. It wasn't just about solving a puzzle. It was about how he solved it, his patience, his attitude, his focus. Cyrilla was watching more than his actions. She was watching his heart. The next test came 2 days later. Cyrilla invited David to the garden deck, where rare plants from over 50 planets were kept. She gave him a simple task. Take care of a Zentari flowering vine for 1 day. Speak. To it, water it. Touch it gently, she instructed. It blooms only when it feels safe. David laughed. A plant with trust issues. Sounds familiar? He spent the day tending the vine. At first, nothing happened. But slowly, the plant opened its leaves. By nightfall, a single purple flower bloomed in his hand. Cyrilla returned and saw it. You have gentle hands, she said. David smiled. I try not to break things. Later, as they walked side by side under the station's starlight panels, Cyrilla looked at him. You are not a soldier, she said. David shrugged. Not a very good one, at least. You are. Kind, strange, honest. These are rare traits. Where I come from. David looked at her, uncertain. Is that good or bad? Cyrilla paused, then said, I do not know yet. They walked in silence for a while. Then she added, but I am not turning away. Something was changing between them, slowly, carefully. Not a romance built on words, but a connection built on time, on tests, on trust. And David knew deep inside that whatever came next, he would keep trying to prove himself, not because he had to, but because he wanted to. 2 weeks passed since David Mercer began Cyrilla's quiet tests. He didn't always understand them, but he tried each one with honesty. He didn't pretend to be perfect, he just tried to be real, and Cyrilla kept. Watching, she didn't praise or scold. She only watched, listened, and sometimes smiled. One day, while walking through the Star Garden deck. Cyrilla stopped beside a crystal bench and said, "It is time for something deeper." David raised an eyebrow. "Deeper than alien puzzles and shy flowers?" "Yes," she replied, calmly. "This test is not for your hands. It is for your memories." He blinked. "Memories." She nodded. "It's called the weaving, a Zentari tradition. It allows two minds to share a single experience. We open a safe path between thoughts, memories, emotions, and feelings." David stared at her. "You mean I'll see your past, and you will see mine?" she said. "Only what we allow to be seen, nothing more." David hesitated. It sounded personal, be even dangerous, but then again, he trusted her. And he wanted her to trust him too. "I'll do it," he said. The ritual took place in a quiet chamber deep inside the Zentari section of the station. The walls were covered in soft light and slow-moving patterns. The air smelled like clean water and old books. Cyrilla sat across from him, holding a small glowing orb in her hands. It pulsed with a slow, calm rhythm. "You must clear your mind," she said. "No lies, no pretending. Only true thoughts will be seen." David nodded. "I'll try." She placed the orb between them. It floated in the air, glowing brighter. A soft hum filled the room. "Touch the orb when ready," she said. David reached out. His fingers touched the surface and then the world. Changed at first, it was just light and sound. Colors he couldn't name, and he felt something cold rain. A sharp voice. Small hand holding a training weapon. He saw Cyrilla's memory, a young girl being trained by strict elders. Running through long halls, failing a test, standing in silence as others judged her. Being told again and again, control. Focus. Do not feel too much. Then the memory shifted. A space battle. Bright lights. Panic. Cyrilla as a young diplomat. Watching people get hurt. Her voice unheard. Choices doubted. And finally her standing alone in a large hall. Watched, but not seen. Respected, but not understood. David blinked. His heart felt heavy. But he said nothing. Then Cyrilla's voice echoed through the glowing air. "Now, your turn." The light swirled again. Suddenly, Cyrilla stood in David's memories. A boy on Earth, building small machines from broken parts. His father leaving for war. His mother working late. David alone in his room, drawing starships and dreaming of peace in the galaxy. She saw him training with a broken weapon, laughing when it failed. She saw him helping others, even when he had nothing. She saw him afraid during a hull breach. During his first mission, but still standing up to protect others. She saw him whisper in the cafeteria, "She's so beautiful. I wonder if she'd marry me, not with shame, but with awe." The memory faded. The light dimmed. They both opened their eyes. For a moment neither spoke. David wiped a tear from his cheek. "That was a lot." Cyrilla was quiet. Her voice was softer than before. "You carry your emotions like fire in a glass." He looked at her. "Too much?" "No," she said, "but more than I expected." David smiled weakly. "You did not need to." "Hide it," Cyrilla replied. She stood up, then paused. "I saw your fear," she said, "but I also saw your courage. Not the kind that fights, but the kind that holds on." David nodded. "That's the only kind I've got." She looked at him, and this time her smile was full and real. "You are not like us," she said. "But that is not a weakness." He stood beside her. "So, did I pass this test too?" Cyrilla tilted her head thoughtfully.
Oh.
"There's no pass or fail in memory.
Oh.
Only truth. And I saw enough truth to take one more step forward." David took a deep breath. "What's the next step?" He looked at the stars outside. "You will see soon enough." The station Orion Arc floated quietly above the moon of Cyrex 4, shining, like a silver coin in space, but not all was peaceful. Something was watching, far beyond the edge of the system. Hidden behind drifting asteroid fields, a Varnak spy ship waited in silence. The Varnak were not friends of the Terran Union or the Zentari. They disliked peace. They believed in power. They didn't like the growing friendship between humans and the Zentari people. Inside Orion Arc, David Mercer walked down a quiet corridor with Cyrilla beside him. She had invited him to join her for a systems tour visit to parts of the station he rarely saw. "Why me?" he asked as they walked past humming energy cores and glowing crystal panels. "You are no longer just a guard," Cyrilla said. "You're a part of something more now. You should understand how this station breathes." David didn't fully understand her words, but he liked walking beside her. Their quiet tour was interrupted by a sudden flicker of the lights. Then came a soft but sharp alarm, not loud, but urgent. It came from the Kumsare chamber, 2 floors above. Cyrilla stopped. "That is not a scheduled alert." David tapped his wristpad. "Security's already checking, but wait, communications are dropping across Deck 4. Cyrilla's expression turned serious. "We must go there now." They moved fast, climbing emergency stairs since the lifts had locked down. As they reached the Kumsare, David saw the door slightly open. That wasn't normal. He drew a small plasma wrench from his belt. Not a weapon, but better than nothing. Cyrilla stepped beside him, her body tense and calm like a trained scout. Inside, the chamber was dark. A control panel sparked. Cables hung loose. One of the main relay units had been pulled out. Then they heard movement. 2 figures turned sharply from the far. Corner Varnock agents with hard skin like cracked stone and glowing eyes. David stepped forward without thinking. "Freeze." The agents hissed in a strange language and ran. One shoved a panel open, trying to escape through a vent shaft. David gave chase while Cyrilla moved toward the control board, fingers flying over alien keys. "I can stop the signal leak," she shouted. "But I need time." David nodded and jumped onto a ladder after the second Varnock. The agent swung around and kicked him back. David hit the wall hard, but didn't stop. He tackled the creature mid-climb. They rolled onto the floor, crashing into crates. The Varnock reached for a small blade. David grabbed a metal rod from the ground and blocked it just in time. It wasn't about being the strongest. David knew he wasn't, but he was stubborn, and he didn't quit. Using his weight, he pushed the agent into a wall, knocking him unconscious. He turned and saw Cyrilla still at the console. "I need 1 more minute," she called. David heard footsteps. Behind him, the second Varnak was back, but this time he wasn't alone. A security team arrived drawn by David's emergency signal. They tackled the second agent just before he reached Cyrilla. Cyrilla pressed one last key. The system hummed. The lights returned to full brightness. The alarm stopped. "We did it," she whispered. Later, after both agents were secured and the repairs began, David and Cyrilla stood near the observation window. "You fought well," Cyrilla said quietly. "I did what I had to do," David replied. "You're the who saved the Cums." "We both did something important," she said. "Together." David looked at her. "That's what this has always been about, hasn't it? Not puzzles or plants, not tests, but whether we could work together." Cyrilla turned to face him. "You are not Zentari. I am not human. But when trouble came, you didn't freeze. You didn't run. You stood beside me. That means more than many words." David nodded. "So what now?" Cyrilla looked thoughtful. "Now others will watch, not just me." He frowned. "Others. Zentari Council, my people, they will know about this event. And they will want to know about you." David laughed nervously. "I hope they're more forgiving than translator drones." Cyrilla didn't laugh, but her eyes softened. "You will not face them alone." David stood quietly. Outside, the stars shimmered. Inside, something had changed. He was no longer just a human security guard. He was someone who had proven himself not with power, but with courage and care, and Cyrilla had noticed. The story of what happened in the Cums chamber spread fast. People on the station whispered about how a human and a Zentari had stopped a Varnak attack together. Some called it bravery. Others called it something else, a sign that humans and Zentari truly trust one another. but not everyone was happy about it. 3 days later, Sorella received a message from the Zentari High Council. It arrived through a private channel, marked urgent. When she opened it, her face became still. David found her later. Sitting alone in the botanical dome, her hands folded in her lap. "You're usually walking when you think," he said, trying to sound light. Sorella didn't smile. "The council has summoned me," she said softly. David blinked. "Summoned. They want me to return to the homeworld. They believe I have allowed emotion to cloud my judgment." David sat beside her. "Because of me?" Sorella nodded. "They've seen the reports. The weaving. The time we've spent together. The way I speak of you. They believe it has gone too far." David's throat felt dry. "I didn't mean to get you in trouble." "You didn't," she said. "They think I forgot my place. They think I'm acting like a human." David looked down. "Maybe that's not such a bad thing." "To them," Sorella said, "it is." The next day, she left for the council chamber, located in a hidden room near the Zentari embassy on the station. It wasn't just a meeting, it was a judgment. David wasn't invited. He waited outside, sitting on a bench, watching the large silver doors. Each minute felt longer than the last. He thought about the first time he saw Sorella, how quiet and untouchable she seemed. Now she was in there fighting for the right to make her own choice, and he couldn't do anything inside the chamber. Their robes shimmered with glowing lines of rank and wisdom. Their faces were calm, but their eyes were sharp. "You have allowed a human to grow too close," said Counselor Veleran. "Why?" Sorella answered without fear. "Because he has shown what few others have: truth, patience, and courage." "He is not one of us," another counselor said. "Does not follow our ways." "No," Sorella agreed. "He follows his ways. Those ways saved our station." The counselors murmured softly among themselves. "Are you requesting permission to form a bond with this human?" Veleran asked. "I am not requesting," Sorella said. "I am stating my choice." There was silence. Then, soft disapproval. "This could break tradition," one said. "It may also build something new," Sorella replied. Outside, David stood when the doors opened. Sorella walked out slowly, her expression unreadable. "Well," he asked quietly. "They are not pleased," she said. "But they will not stop me." David let out a breath. "So that's it? You're free to stay?" "I am free to choose," she said. He smiled. "And have you chosen?" She looked at him for a long time. Then she said, "Do you remember when you said you wondered if I would marry you?" David turned red. "Kind of hard to forget." Sorella stepped closer. "At first I thought it was foolish, but now I understand. It was a sign not of carelessness, but of courage." "I was just tired," he joked. "You were honest," she corrected. "And I will now be honest too." David's heart thud dead. She reached out and gently touched his hand. "I have chosen you," she said simply. That evening, as the station lights dimmed for sleep cycle, the two of them stood by the wide window of the observation deck. Outside, the stars looked quiet and peaceful. Inside, something rare had happened. A human and a Zentari too lives. Two cultures had reached across the galaxy's distance and found something true. Not just friendship, not just duty, but a bond formed. Through struggle, through respect, and through choice. And even though their journey wasn't over, they had taken the step that mattered most. Days passed slowly after Sorella made her choice. The news traveled fast through the Terran Union, through the Zentari homeworld, and even across other nearby systems. Some people were confused, some were shocked. But many were simply curious. A Zentari bonding with a human? It had never happened before, but it had now. David stood in front of the mirror in his room, adjusting the collar of his dress uniform. He had worn it only twice before. Once when he graduated from the academy, and once at a funeral. Now, he wore it for something very different. He took a deep breath, checked his reflection one more time, and walked out. The station's event hall. was quiet, decorated with simple lights and flowers from different worlds. No music played. Centauri didn't believe in loud ceremonies. They believed in stillness, in shared silence, and in meaningful words. Cyrilla stood at the center of the room, dressed in a white robe that shimmered like moonlight. Her hair was braided in the Centauri way, with silver threads woven through each strand. David walked up to her, unsure if his steps were too fast or too slow. "You look," he started to say, then stopped. Cyrilla raised one eyebrow. "Say it." David smiled. "Beautiful." She gave the smallest of smiles. Then the memory lives on. They stood together now, with people around them. Centauri elders, human officers, friends from the station. No one spoke. They were all waiting for the moment. Cyrilla stepped forward first. She held a small crystal in her hands. It glowed softly in blue and green light. "This crystal," she began, "is from the waters of my home planet. It only forms after years of still tides and calm wind. It holds patience and memory." She placed it gently in David's hands. "You are not from my world. You do not speak as I speak. You do not walk as I walk. But you stood beside me when others turned away. You gave truth where others gave silence. For that I give you my crystal, my choice, my bond." David didn't know if he should say anything. His heart felt too full, but he spoke anyway. "I didn't come to this station looking for anything. I thought I'd just do my job and try to stay out of trouble. Then I saw you. I said something stupid." Some people in the crowd smiled quietly. "But that moment changed my life," he continued, "because it showed me someone worth fighting beside. Someone strong, someone honest, someone I care about." He took a small chain from his pocket. At the end of it hung a thin metal ring, not expensive but meaningful. He had made it himself in the workshop using parts from an old navigation module. "This is human metal," he said. "Scratched, dented, but still strong, just like me." The crowd chuckled softly. "I give it to you, Cyrilla. Not because you need it, but because I want to share something of my world with yours." He placed the ring gently in her hand. Stood in silence for a moment, then Cyrilla said, "It is done." The crowd bowed their heads slightly. A few clapped. A few wiped away quiet tears. Later that night, the station lights dimmed for a rest cycle. David and Cyrilla sat on a bench near the observation deck, watching the stars. "You know," David said, "back when I first saw you in the cafeteria, I never thought we'd end up here." "You whispered something foolish," Cyrilla said. He laughed. "I really did. But it was real," she added, "and that is why it stayed in my mind." David looked at her. "Do you think your people will accept us?" "Some will," she said. "Some won't. But I did not choose them." He smiled. "I'm glad." They sat in silence for a while, just watching the stars, far out in space. The universe kept spinning, full of wars, peace treaties, ancient secrets, and strange planets. But here, on Orion Arc, something small and powerful had happened. Two different. Lived two different hearts. One bond built on truth, choice, quiet strength. And for David Mercer and Cyrilla of Centauri, it was only the beginning.